Welcome to the Ringer NFL show. Sheil Kapadia here with Diante Lee and Steven Ruiz. Welcome to everyone watching on FanDuel TV, or if you're listening on Spotify. We thought this week 11 had a chance to be one of the better weeks of the season. I think it was the best week of the season, from the 1 o'clock window to the late window to the night game, Bengals Chargers. It delivered in a big way. We're going to talk about all of it. I mean, this show might go 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. I don't know what these guys have to do in the morning, but I'm ready to go. I'm not even going to exchange pleasantries. We're going to get into it with the lessons we learned in week 11. Then we will plant our flags, and then we will do our awards. Diante Lee, start us off. What is the biggest thing you learned in week 11?
You know, we talked on Thursday, and I feel like we've been talking for weeks in recap shows as well about what is it going to take for a team to take advantage of some of the mistakes that Kansas City is making? What is it going to take for a team to finally get over the hump in these clutch situations? And I think I walked away from Sunday's game between Buffalo and Kansas City feeling like the Bills are one of the few teams that have just enough defense and obviously a force of nature at quarterback to be able to take advantage of the slim margin for error that Kansas City's been playing with all year. And so much of this was just them not losing those third and longs that Patrick Mahomes has so routinely turned into 1st and 10s this season. I think that last week against Buffalo was a great example of him using his legs to extend, find guys deep down the field. I think that from Buffalo's perspective, they were able to take some of what Denver did well in terms of keeping him hemmed in the pocket a little bit better. They had some spies. They used some stunts and twists. I thought this was a very live legs game for Von Miller, and he played really well opposite of Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa. I thought that rotation did really well. They got a good pocket push. And then I think on the back end, and this is something that I think that's uncharacteristic of Sean McDermott defenses, and I think that maybe this will be a little bit of a key into how he'll play them if they meet again in January. We saw more man in obvious passing situations from them. And when it wasn't man, it was much more aggressive, matchy types of coverages. These were things that they were doing in 2021 when Trey White was healthy and Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde were still healthy and at their best, where they were just sticking the routes in the midst of that playoff run. And I think that you saw a little bit of that today. And if that's the way that this defensive backfield can play on passing downs and really be able to clamp down on some of the speed disadvantages that they may have, we obviously saw Xavier Worthy get loose a couple times. I think that's a product of them trying to play tight coverage. But once that was out of the picture and they played very disciplined up front in terms of making Patrick Mahomes have to beat them from the pocket, you saw just how little air there was in their defense. And that's not what we saw when they played in the AFC divisional round last season. We saw a lot more soft zone, and Patrick Mahomes in those second and third quarter was really able to just kind of have his pick of what he wanted in the middle of the field. You did not see those kinds of throws today. And so much of that, I think, is a credit to what Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott wanted to do defensively in terms of denying routes and making Patrick Mahomes play with a little bit of discomfort.
Yeah. I talked about the Travis Kelce index and how that kind of is the signal for how healthy this offense is and how healthy it's been over the last couple of years. And he had 4 targets for 8 yards today. Noah Gray was the team's leader in targets. Him and Xavier Worthy tied for that at 4 or 5 apiece. And this is usually a defense that Travis Kelce kills. Like, he has in 8 games, he has 641 yards against it, 54 catches. In 8 games. And
no Matt Milano. So this will be lining up pretty well for him to have a great game because they don't have a guy in the middle of the field.
And I think they just opened up Matt Milano's practice window, so they should be getting him back soon. This is a concerning result for them. I know we said on Friday that the Chiefs could afford to lose this game, but and they can. I still think they're going to get home field advantage. But when you look at how they match up with Buffalo, I just don't think it's a great matchup. Buffalo is the one team that doesn't seem to be intimidated by what Kansas City represents, and the fact that they've won a bunch of Lombardi trophies and they're going for a 3rd straight. I'm concerned about the offense. I don't think a Rashee Rice type breakout like we saw at the end of last year is coming. And I don't know who it's supposed to come from. Is it Xavier Worthy? The guy can't figure out the sideline. I don't know how he's going to lead a team's passing game in January.
I can't figure out the sideline. It's true. Patrick Mahomes took blame for that throw after the game, saying he could have left it inside a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that they only had one completion of 20+ yards all game long. That would have obviously been a second one. That was a big play. I mean, he's open. I thought schematically they actually were doing some nice things specifically in the first half of this game, where I thought, okay, they're figuring some things out. This was actually, if you look at offensive success rate, a 93rd percentile game for the Chiefs, which shocked me. So even like that, and I know you're tired of hearing me say that, but it's just it's the explosives. It's been the explosives all season long. It's not a matter of you're going to shut them down completely and they can't move the ball. They have Patrick Mahomes. They had that drive to get back in the game, but you're just like, whoa, he just, wow, he just kind of put him on his back, went right down the field, and they scored a touchdown there. But when you can't produce the explosive plays, which the Chiefs couldn't here, you're going to be in a lot of these close games. They've been in so many close games this season. This wasn't a one-possession game, but they lost, and 7 other wins have been one-possession games. So in those games, the margin for error is going to be so slim. It could be a call here, a penalty there, an injury there, and that's how they've played all season long.
We're going to have to ban Sheil from citing the Chiefs' success rate. I'm tired of hearing the success rate thing. If you're not getting explosive plays because defenses are taking away, like, of course you're going to have a high success rate. Defenses are letting you have that high success rate.
Well, no, not of course you're going to. There are plenty of times an offense doesn't have any explosive plays and they have a terrible success rate. What are you talking about?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. But defenses don't play other teams like the Chiefs. They would rather die by, death by a million paper cuts than let the Chiefs have explosives. And now, I don't know, they're struggling to even do. I know they have the high success rate, but they're not like going on these long drives where they're putting up points every week. It has to be a concern at some point. Success rate doesn't give you points on the scoreboard, and I think that's the concern with them. And then, like, this week, we saw the third down magic from Holmes kind of run out, and it speaks to what Diante said. Like, the Bills were able to play man coverage, and it's not like they were able to play man coverage because they have like these great cover corners now. It's because the Chiefs don't have receivers that deter you from playing man coverage like they used to have in the past. And until they find one, it used to be Kelsey. Rashee Rice emerged as another guy that could do it in January last year. Right now, they have nobody because Kelsey is not on that list. It might have to be DeAndre Hopkins, which is a big concern for a team that's trying to win a third Super Bowl in a row.
I'm with you. You know what? I'm kind of glad that Sheil brought up the success rate thing, because I actually think that helps tell the story of the game today. And then just what we've been talking about with Kansas City all year long. They didn't have a problem moving the ball on early downs, especially on the ground. I actually thought that what was happening on early downs for Kansas City was pretty reminiscent of that Monday Night Football game they played against the Saints about a month or so ago, where the Saints just wanted to play a lot of cover one, a lot of match quarters, which means you're going to be giving up running lanes on the interior unless you've just got all world, space eaters on the inside. And their guys are decent. Obviously, they have some guys that can play on the interior, but they're not those types of players. But I thought that it was smart on Buffalo's behalf to say, we know we can't sell out to stop you on early downs without giving up a bunch of explosive plays. What it's going to take to be able to win on first and second down, if we're going to load up the box, if we're going to blitz you, opens us up in ways we're not comfortable with, for them to not get impatient and not start blitzing the run and not start blitzing in these second and manageable situations to try to force a third and long, I think speaks really well to how they crafted together this game plan. And then on those third and manageables, and this is really why I feel like this game says more about Buffalo than maybe it does about Kansas City. The fact that Kansas City was able to move the ball pretty well on those third and manageables, and Buffalo was never put in a discomforting position out in the second half, speaks really well to them being able to take away what they know Kansas City cannot do or cannot win without, which are explosive plays, and trusting the fact that if our pass rush gets home enough and we keep this guy in the pocket, their wide receivers can't do anything unless Patrick Mahomes is creating space for them by extending. And this was, I think, just a masterfully crafted game plan for them, in spite of the fact that Kansas City was able to move the ball on the ground and with the short passing game.
Yeah, I think it's funny because it was a good defensive game plan. I came away from this game thinking the Bills offense was the story, honestly. So it's funny, we can look at the same game and view it a little bit differently. I mean, if you look at the Chiefs, every game they've played since the beginning of last year, of their 3 worst games defensively, 2 have been these last 2 games against the Bills, 1 in the playoffs last year, and then this one. I mean, this Bills offense can score on anyone. This is a fantastic Chiefs defense, and the Bills, with the addition of Amari Cooper, I thought he had 2 big-time catches in this game. We talk about explosives. I mean, he gave them 2 explosives on catches that maybe other guys don't make. They had 6 plays of 20-plus yards in this game. That was the big difference from the Bills offense from this game to their playoff game last year, where that was just like death by 1,000 cuts. This was, no, we can still pick up big chunks. And then that last drive, I mean, it's so funny when everyone watching the game knows exactly what the stakes are. They're getting the ball with 7:53 left. if you give that guy on the other side the ball back and they have time and they're, to score a touchdown, he's probably going to do it. They get the 4th and 2. They don't kick the field goal. They stay aggressive, and Josh Allen delivers an unbelievable play for the 26-yard touchdown. So it's like this lesson against Mahomes that you're basically usually going to lose. If you have a chance to win, try to win. Make sure you try to win. Don't get conservative in that spot. So in addition to what you mentioned with McDermott, with the game plan stuff on defense, I think just the way he managed that, because we can look at it and say it's easy. Of course you go for it. I don't think every coach is going to go for it there. I think some of them are going to turtle and kick a field goal. And I thought he did a good job, Ruiz, not taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands there.
No, and that's usually a situation where it goes the Chiefs' way. Like the Chiefs always make the stop there. Mahomes gets the ball back, he drives down, and he wins the game. But instead, Josh Allen takes over the game. He runs it in for the touchdown, and then Mahomes throws a pick, and the game's over. Like it went the complete opposite of how it usually goes. And I think Joe Brady deserves a ton of credit for what he's done with Josh Allen. Tony Romo mentioned it during the game. Like on early downs, they run a different offense than they run on late downs.
I thought he might be a listener to the pod, Ruiz, because was it you or Dion? One of you just made this point last week. So, Tony, if you're listening, thank you. Just, rate, review, subscribe, unsubscribe, all the good stuff. Sorry, I had to get
wherever
that in
you get
there.
your pods. No, but yeah, he separated those two offenses. On early downs, they're basically like, we're throwing screen passes, we're doing RPOs, we're doing all that stuff. We're not letting Josh Allen hold on to the ball. Because like when Josh Allen makes his mental mistakes and they happen on 1st and 2nd down, that's when it sets the team back. When he's playing that chaotic style, throwing those YOLO balls on 3rd down, it's not really that it's not that big of a risk when he does that. That's why I wasn't really concerned about the interceptions last year, because a lot of them came in 3rd and long situations. Like if you look at the EPA, he didn't really even cost his team a lot of points by throwing those interceptions. But I think Joe Brady has found the perfect way to silo those two versions of Josh Allen, which Josh Allen, I think, said like a month ago, there's two versions of me. Sometimes you got to let the dumb one out. The time you let the dumb one out is on 3rd down. And Joe Brady has done a masterful job of recognizing that and building the offense around it.
I will say this is the first time I think Kansas City has ever had the 3rd down magic thing happen to them. Because if you look at a lot of the data coming out of this game, it looks like what a Chiefs game would look like in reverse, right? The Bills on early downs, it's kind of ho-hum, because I think that Kansas City did a really good job of winning at the line of scrimmage, stopping the run. That's been a lot of the reason why Buffalo's look so good coming out of that 2-game losing streak earlier this season and just rolling everybody else, is that they've kind of found that run game and been able to protect this offense. But I think that even with that not working, the fact that, to Steven's point, you can get into this 3rd down world where let's open it up. And now we're going to give you these mesh routes. We're going to give you a bunch of stuff over the middle of the field. We're going to try to keep our wide receivers on the move, because we know that our quarterback, when he doesn't want to be sacked, when he doesn't want to be pressured, you can't pressure that guy. And that's what it looked like on Sunday, is that at any point when he decided, all right, I don't like my look, my 1st and 2nd read aren't there. Okay, the pocket is making me uncomfortable. And he was able to put his foot in the ground and get up the field. You immediately felt all the danger that posed to Kansas City's defense. And this is not a defense that very often is put in a position where you're watching saying, uh-oh, the quarterback's about to make a play on you. Oh, it looks, they're in rhythm, or he's really punishing you for every mental mistake, or every time you're out leveraged, or a guy has an advantage. Even the one-on-one balls that he threw out to Amari Cooper today, all of them look good, and they weren't able to convert on each of them, but they all look good. And I think that just having these different pieces in the offense that Josh Allen can reliably come to allows those creation mode, those improvising moments to have that much more impact, because it's not out of necessity. And that's the thing that we've been hammering all season long, is that when they don't have to rely on that out of necessity, this offense looks unbeatable. And this was one of those weeks where when they needed it, they got what they needed in order to beat a Super Bowl contending football team.
I'm gonna keep grinding my axe against Andy Reid's play calling this year. I thought I this is totally reductive, and I'm probably making more out of this than it needs to be. But I thought it was very funny that like the Bills brought on an extra offensive lineman that ran this play action pass that like sprung open a wide open receiver for like a 30-yard catch downfield, and then the Chiefs bring on their extra offensive lineman, and then they run a play action pass, and the extra offensive lineman is the check down option.
Yeah,
like you're doing too much.
Do it to Caliendo.
Too much. And I have to say, the tackle by Teron Johnson on that play, He tackled that guy like he was like a slot receiver, that offensive lineman. And like, that's a credit to Sean McDermott. And I think that's like one of the most underrated things about him is like they play so much nickel. And you know what that means? These defensive backs have to tackle, and they always tackle, and they're always willing to tackle. You saw DeMar Hamlin flying around. You saw Teron Johnson's always flying around. Rasul Douglas was making plays in the backfield, like getting in there, sticking his nose in there. Like he's got all these DBs playing like they're linebackers, and that's very hard to do.
It's an incredible job he's done with that defense this year. Again, this was supposed to be a reset year where you're losing these veterans who have been in your system for years. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, they're all gone. You're bringing in new guys, and look at how well they've played this season. Bills improved to 9-2. I'm just happy with the result because it makes the rest of the season more interesting. Yeah. As we said on the preview show, if the Chiefs would have won this game, I mean, the 1 seed would have been all but over unless they completely collapsed and went like 3-4 down the stretch. Now the Chiefs are 9-1. The Bills are 9-2. Chiefs would lose the tiebreaker to the Bills. So they got to keep playing. They got to figure this stuff out. Maybe they just lose a couple 1-score games here down the stretch, and the Bills have a legit shot at the 1 seed here. All right, take a break. We come back. We talk about another game in the AFC with 2 very good quarterbacks. We're back on the Ringer NFL show. I'm up. Bengals Chargers Sunday Night Football. I thought my Bengals were going to complete the comeback. They had so many opportunities. 2 missed field goals down the stretch. A miss to Jamar Chase down the right sideline. Chargers escape with a 34-27 victory. My lesson, and I don't know, either you guys are going to agree with me or you're just going to completely crush me on this. I don't think there's a whole lot separating those 2 teams from the AFC heavyweights. I think in a 1-game playoff, the AFC is wide open. I mean, I know they're flawed teams, but think about the teams we just talked about. We know what the Chiefs' flaws are. We talk about them every single week. They don't blow teams out. Every opponent is in the game against them. And as much as we like the Bills, you're telling me if the Bills have to welcome Joe Burrow to Buffalo in a playoff game, you're feeling really confident that the Bills are going to beat them. So I don't know if the Bengals are going to get in the playoffs now. They're 4-7. The margin of error is slim. They still get a game against the Broncos down the stretch. That's a team that they have to jump. So they still have a shot. And then you have the Chargers who, like, I was saying irresponsible things about the Chargers in the first half. I was like, are they the best team in the AFC right now? They looked unstoppable there. And then they have the stretch in the second half where you're like, what is happening? Did somebody else go and overtake Justin Herbert's body here? Are they actually going to lose this game with Jim Harbaugh? They're not supposed to be capable of charging again. But the point is, I think there's like an A+ version of both these teams that can be very dangerous in the AFC. Yeah. And I love how the AFC playoff picture is shaping up. The Chiefs are not a juggernaut. The Bills are right there. We're going to talk about the Ravens and the Steelers in a minute. We're going to talk about the Broncos as well. Like, this is wide open with a bunch of quarterbacks who, if they show up on a given day and they play their A game, they can beat any of the other quarterbacks. So, Ruiz, am I crazy?
Yeah, you're crazy. You're getting mesmerized by the quarterback play you just watch, and you're ignoring the other 52 players on the team in these situations. Guess what? Those other teams that they're competing with, they have great quarterbacks too, and the rest of their teams are also good. They're not throwing to Will Dissly on 3rd down. They're not relying on one of the
throwing to what's the Italian offensive lineman you just mentioned? What's his name? Panunzio? Caliendo. Yeah.
Caliendo.
They're throwing to Caliendo. Come on.
That's a good point. But the Bills aren't doing that, and the Ravens aren't doing that. No, I just don't really believe in the Chargers. If the Bengals got there, I would think they can compete with any of these teams.
Really? You think the Bengals have a higher ceiling than the Chargers?
Yeah, because they've been there. They have the experience. They have the coaching that's been there too. I don't know if I trust the Chargers yet. I think we saw some cracks in the defense in the second half. That inexperienced secondary would scare the hell out of me in the postseason. Greg Roman calling the offense would scare the hell out of me in the postseason. Like, all of my hopes in the Chargers would be based on the fact that Justin Herbert is good at football, but he has to throw to people. And I think it's going to get harder as they face harder teams.
Yes.
I feel like You know what's funny about your take, Sheil, is I think I came in after the Chargers beat the Browns and said this team is going to win a road playoff game. And I'm looking at the AFC playoff picture right now, and obviously it's subject to change. But if it ended today, they'd be on the road against the Texans. And I think I'm picking the Chargers to beat the version of Houston that we're watching right now. So yeah. I do think it's entirely possible that these teams can end up playing spoiler. Obviously for Cincinnati, the road is a little bit longer and they're going to need a lot of help now after losing to the Chargers. Getting this tiebreaker, I think, would have gone a long way for them. They've kind of got to play lights out football the rest of the way. But I think that we should come out of this feeling like, you were 100% justified to not quit the Bengals at any point this season, because for all of this defense's issues, and it looked like in the first half, they weren't going to be able to stop a nosebleed. Just what they're able to do in terms of creating explosive offense at a moment's notice. You can't let that go. You can't act like that doesn't exist. And you saw that in the second half. I mean, T. Higgins splitting the bracket coverage to get a touchdown. Ridiculous. You get Jamar Chase down the field. He was able to spread the ball around. Everybody, it felt like, that he targeted today made a difference-making play. And I thought that Joe Burrow in the second half, after looking like he was going to have a lot of trouble in the pocket, how he was able to escape and extend and then find guys on his second, third, fourth looks, that was as good of quarterback play, and I think emblematic of the way he's been playing all year. There's really no reason for either fan base outside of maybe Cincinnati, just from looking at your wins and losses, to feel bad about where the team stand right now.
Yeah, I thought like the entire game for both quarterbacks was just emblematic of the stress, the playmaking stress that both of these offenses put on them. Like, we saw brilliant stretches of play from Justin Herbert in the first half and brilliant stretches of play from Joe Burrow in the second half. And then at the end, they both kind of cracked, and Justin Herbert missed some throws. Sheil, despite his very creative use of the passive voice, when he said a throw was missed to Jamar Chase and he didn't want to put Joe Burrow's name on it. Yeah, you didn't mention that Joe Burrow was the one that missed the throw. But no, Joe Burrow missed a couple throws at the end of the game there too. But like, I'm not putting like those missed throws on those quarterbacks. You're allowed to miss a couple throws. Every quarterback in the league is going to miss throws when you're asking them play after play after play after play to make up for not a bad offense, but a flawed offense, and a flawed offensive setup for both sides.
The Bengals are now 1-5 in one-score games. They lost to the Chiefs by 1. They lost to the Ravens by 3. They lost to the Ravens by 1. And then they lose this game in the final 2 minutes, 2 missed field goals, and they lose this game to the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, this is going to be
the it factor. I thought the Bengals won because the quarterback's it factor. They won all those close games. What happened to that?
I mean, I never said anything about an it factor. The quarterback did set them up for 2 field goals that they missed. I guess those, those don't count. I don't know if those are part of the it factor or not.
MVP quarterbacks finish off the drives.
Oh my God! Yeah, the 5 drives in a row where they didn't score. He fumbled.
Stephen A. Ruiz.
I see. Now you're putting this. I like Herbert. See, you put me. I just said such a nice thing. I was saying irresponsible things about the Chargers, and then you try to corner me. But he did. If we're talking about it in reality, I mean, he fumbled. He missed 2 third-down throws, and he took a sack on 5 possessions. Like that was not a good second half for Justin Herbert. And then he comes back, gets one more chance after the missed field goals, and makes 2 big throws to Ladd McConkey on that final possession. So I'm just saying these two going on the road in wild card weekend is so exciting to me. Now, only one of them is, if we look at the odds, only one of them is likely to do that, but maybe just a road playoff game with these guys. I feel like we've come a long way from some of these Saturday afternoon wild card games we had to watch back in the day.
But you're assuming that Burrow's going to make the playoffs. Like, I don't know if the
I just said one of them. I just said it's probably going to be one of them.
We need both of them. Like, we need to find a way to get Russ and Bo Nix out of the playoffs. And Bo Nix has been playing well. He's doing well for a rookie. Blah blah blah. All those caveats. But I don't want him wasting it.
Look, when you mentioned coming a long way. I was not raised to be a Chargers fan as a San Diego native, but I've got to say, for all the Chargers football that I've had to watch in my lifetime, them being on the local broadcast, this is the first time the flow of the game has gone that way for the Chargers in a long time. I am used to them missing the pair of field goals in the second half and having the quarterback take a bunch of pressure and miss maybe the one throw you need, and your defense not be able to get a stop when you need it. So I know there are probably a lot of Chargers fans, and we've been hearing about it all year, especially as they've gotten hot over the last month and a half, this is the first time I've seen a Chargers team that I'm looking at and saying, just by style of play, they give themselves an opportunity to win every single football game that they're in. And that's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of the season when we were doing preview shows. It's not really about the 1 through 53 for this team. It's Justin Herbert being who he is. Jesse Minter squeezing blood from stones with this defense. And I think you got to see what its upper limit was in the second half. There's not much that defensive backfield can do against wide receivers as talented as Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but they've done pretty well to give themselves a fighting chance. And when Justin Herbert is dialed in like he was for the first 2.5 quarters of this game, it's tough to get this team out of here. And I think the same will be true of them when we get to the postseason.
Ravens next week for the Los Angeles Chargers. That's going to be fun. And in a few weeks, they get to play the Chiefs again. And I feel like when they played the Chiefs the first time, they didn't know who they were. They were running the ball on every early down. They weren't cutting
Herbert
it loose.
Was still hurt.
Yeah, and they still lost 17-10 in that game. So those will be good measuring sticks to see if I'm nuts or if I'm maybe onto something that maybe they could give those teams some issues in the playoffs. All right, let's take a break. We come back. We talk about another matchup in the AFC that was fantastic today. Back on the Ringer NFL show. Ruiz, what do you got? What's your lesson?
My lesson is that the Ravens are a poorly coached team right now. Like, they came into this game leading the NFL in penalties and penalty yardage, and then they committed 12 more penalties and basically lost the game because of the penalties. They've been busting coverages on the defensive side of the ball all season long, and they allowed, you knew what the Steelers were going to come in and try to do, and they still allowed the Steelers to complete a couple deep balls and stay in this football game. There were fumbles, there were bad penalties. There were missed throws by Lamar on out of structured plays where it didn't look like he was on the same page with his receiver. There were missed kicks by Justin Tucker, who, I mean, it's not even wash at this point. He's washed up. Like, I don't know another way to say it. It pains me. It hurts my heart to see the GOAT go out like this, but he's not helpful for that football team right now. But these are all the common symptoms of their losses over the years, these inexplicable losses, which they keep on stacking. You heard Lamar Jackson say it after the game. He seemed so frustrated. He's like, we just keep giving these games away. He included the AFC title game, which I totally agree with. I thought they were the better team in that game, and they kind of just played their C game, which tends to happen with this team. It feels like it happens with them more often than any other team. And to me, that's a sign of bad coaching. I know we give Harbaugh the benefit of the doubt, and I do think he's a good coach, but it's been a while since they've, performed solidly in these games year after year after year. It just doesn't happen anymore. And I mean, we talk about Lamar's failure to win in the playoffs, but what about Harbaugh's failure to win in the playoffs? Like, he is losing those upset games too, and he's the coach. He's supposed to get this team ready to play. And when they lose, it seems like they come out flat and they are not ready to play, and they lose to an opponent that they're better than usually.
Yeah, 4 losses now for the Ravens. They've all felt the same, to your point. They lose by a combined 17 points. They still haven't lost a game, I don't think, by more than one possession this entire season. Yet this is why those losses earlier to the Raiders and the Browns mattered, because now you got 4 losses here, and the Bills are 9-2 and the Chiefs are 9-1. And now this Ravens team, which I'm with you, could potentially be the best team in the NFL. We've said that it stretches, I think, through the first 11 weeks, but now you're going to have to go on the road potentially 2 times, maybe 3 times. I mean, right now they're not in first place. I think they're still the favorites in the AFC North if you look at FanDuel and the betting markets, but you're going to have to go on the road 2 or 3 times. And I'm with you. Like, Diante, my thought watching this Ravens game was like, are they capable of stringing together 4 games where they don't have one of these games in the middle there and lose it? Because that's what it's going to take to win a Super Bowl. You're going to have to win wild card round, divisional round, championship round, and Super Bowl against all good opponents, and not have these games where, to Ruiz's point, you're having penalties, you're having 3 turnovers, you're having 2 missed field goals, 80 yards of penalties, like you said. Like, I don't know that I trust them to be capable of doing that right now, Diante.
I definitely don't trust them to do that right now. And everything that we saw on Sunday is exactly the reason why this team will probably flame out in the postseason again. And it really doesn't have as much to do with Lamar Jackson. Even though I thought that he played a pretty messy game, I think that he was pressing for things down the field when there were opportunities maybe to escape early. And I think that part of that is just him trying to adhere to what the offensive system is. And it's worked more often than not. And I think that in the preview show, one of the things we pointed out was this game and what this team ultimately becomes against the best teams in the NFL really has little to do with Lamar and everything to do with the supporting cast and how they show up against the best teams. And to Steven's point, immediately fumble on the first snap, and that, and as soon as it happens,
didn't you? Here
exactly,
we go.
As soon as it happens, you shrug your shoulders and you're like, oh, that Ravens team showed up today. Okay, I guess that they're going to be in a dogfight against a team they're more talented than all the way to the end. You get the missed kicks. You have all the inopportune penalties. You have all the battling back and forth and the jawing and the after the play stuff. And it's like, I understand that this is a physical rivalry. I'm not trying to take away from that. But you guys are playing like crap, and this team relishes. The team we're playing against relishes in this. That's who they want to be, and if they can get you to play that game, it's advantage Pittsburgh. And they just hung around just long enough, banking on the fact that Baltimore would make the key mistakes it needed for Pittsburgh to be able to take advantage of, and that's exactly what happened. And now you're in a position where an unlucky play like Peyton Wilson basically just having the ball bounce into his gut on that jump ball to Justice Hill.
Was that lucky or was that a great play? I couldn't decide.
It was a great play, but it was unlucky for Baltimore.
That's more of an unlucky turnover, because there's nothing wrong with the play outside of just the outcome for Baltimore, right? But now that play has effectively ended your chances to win the football game because you gave this team a time to burn the clock, and they're already in near field goal territory. You can't win football games this way against the best teams in the NFL. And I wish that I could square the version of Baltimore that we saw this week and the one we saw when they played Las Vegas earlier this year with the one that just curb stomped Buffalo from wire to wire. And the team, I don't know which of these teams we're ever going to get on a weekly basis. And it's frustrating me to no end. And to your point, Sheil, it's not just playing road playoff games. They've basically positioned themselves to where you're going to have to see Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen on the road right now, based on the way that things are going. And that's not where you want to be, no matter how talented of a football team you are.
Why are we I don't get why people are hesitant to just say it's bad. It's a poorly coached team though. It seems like the coaching never gets the blame. And by the way, right now, the Seahawks have a better defense by EPA with Mike Macdonald than the Ravens do.
And we know that's a bad
makes
defense.
No sense with personnel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is it's a fair question. It's a tough question because even in some of those playoff losses, it's felt like a little bit of bad luck here and there. Before we had Greg Roman to push around, but now I think most people think the offensive coordinator is good. And I could also make the case, shouldn't we have expected this team to take a little bit of a step back this year? When you lose a defensive coordinator like Mike Macdonald, it's very hard to replace somebody like that. You had 3 new offensive linemen, and you haven't lost a game by more than 1 possession. So it's one of those is the coaching screwing them up, or would they not even be in some of these situations if the coaching wasn't good?
No, they would be because they have Lamar Jackson. No, they.
Okay.
I'm very confident in saying they would be in these games.
Okay, yeah, it's a fair question for them. And then on the other side, speaking of coaching, I was thinking this might be Mike Tomlin's finest work.
Yes.
Listen, I've said before, put the 2019 season on the Hall of Fame plaque. When you go 8-8 with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges starting 14 games, I don't need to know anything else about you as a coach. I trust you with everything. You are a good coach. But this team is 8-2 right now. They have a plus 71 point differential, which is better than the Ravens, by the way. So it's not like they're just winning a bunch of close games. They've blown some teams out. They've beaten the Ravens now. They've beaten the Broncos now. They've beaten the Chargers now. They're paying their quarterbacks nothing. They made a mid-season quarterback change. They might not be going to the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game, but I do think their defense actually does deserve some credit for what they did today. If you just look at it statistically, this was the Ravens' worst offensive performance of the season. Most weeks, they're looking like a juggernaut. I think we said last week, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens' offense specifically hadn't had a bad game, and I don't think this one was all on Lamar at any rate, but the offense did not have a good game for the Ravens today, and the Steelers, they deserve credit for that. as well. So Diante, it's like I'm running out of words to say about Mike Tomlin. I think he's running away with the Coach of the Year award. And every week where I say, all right, it's going to catch up to him. You can't just win like this messy nonsense, throw in a couple go balls and your defense plays well and maybe something on special teams. And then they win again, and then they win again, and then they win again.
And what the craziest part of it is that they might control their own destiny the rest of the way. They've got Kansas City
right now, in the
Day.
division.
You know, they see the Browns twice. They see the Bengals twice. Those are both teams that I think are vulnerable enough for a team like Pittsburgh to be able to win 3 out of 4 of those or split them. They're going to see the Ravens, which is basically going to be for the AFC North title when they see them on December 21st. Like, we could be talking about this team going into Christmas Day weekend as like potentially the 2 seed in the AFC. And we know this is not the second best team in the AFC. So the fact that they're even in this conversation speaks to how well Mike Tomlin manages games. I mean, again, we talked about it last week when they were closing out the Commanders game. And I think the same thing was true of this week, where you get to the fourth quarter and you could just see Baltimore pushing as hard as they could to get yardage. And Pittsburgh has just done such a great job of closing games offensively, getting the first downs that they need, getting the stops on third downs that they need, forcing a key turnover. It's been that way for the last month, especially for like the last month plus. When they're caught in these uncomfortable situations, they always seem to come out on top of them. And so much of that, I think, is just their level of preparation and how they execute.
Yeah, I was just happy that Russell Wilson threw his dumb interception in the end zone where he just lofted it up. And then that Justin Fields came in and almost blew that.
Slid a half-yard shirt. Yeah.
so we don't like over credit the quarterbacks for turning things around. No, this is like they still have mediocre quarterback play. They just have great coaching, elite coaching, and a very good defense, and that's why they're winning all these games. Like Russell Wilson wasn't great in this game. I don't think. Like you saw,
they didn't score a touchdown. Yeah,
no,
I don't. Yeah.
And how many? We got to start calling those a Tomlin. How many games have they won without scoring a touchdown? I think, did they win the first game of the year without scoring a touchdown?
They won the Falcons game without scoring a touchdown.
They beat the Chiefs in the playoffs without scoring a touchdown that one year. Yeah, we have to rename those two after Tomlin. But yeah,
Tomlin's special.
They are really working around these quarterbacks. And they're like Arthur Smith, he deserves credit too. They have the 16th ranked offense by EPA per play right now with mediocre quarterback play, a running game that hasn't been overly affected, at least not early on in the year. A receiving, they like shadow bench George Pickens earlier in the year. Like there have been issues with this offense, and they're kind of just working around them and keeping this thing together at 8-2. It's really fascinating to watch how they've done it.
Mike Williams still hasn't started yet. He still hasn't started. Like exactly. They traded for a guy. They traded for a veteran who's effectively a non-factor right now, and it bothers them none because of how well they're able to execute in these games.
I did like that idea of bringing Justin Fields in there for a clock eating, just like don't fumble the ball. But yeah, I thought that was, I mean, it won. They did pick up the first down and won the game there. So I thought that was a nice little wrinkle that they had there. I have a little breaking FanDuel gambling odds news. The Pittsburgh Steelers are now favorites to win the AFC North at -145. Baltimore Ravens, you can get at plus odds at +115. Ruiz, do you need us to take a break so you can go, open your FanDuel app? Because I know your eyes are going to light up. That surprises me.
No,
the Steelers still have a very tough remaining schedule.
I was going to say, I feel like that's kind of helped by like the things that are unknown because they've only played one divisional game. Like, I don't think there's much to take out of this. And then you still got to see, like I said, Cincinnati twice. You've got to travel to Baltimore late in the year.
Yeah.
If I were a betting man, that would probably be a bet to fade. I think I would probably want to fade that.
All right, let's take a break. We come back. We will plant some flags from week 11. We are back on the Ringer NFL show. I will start us off by planting my flag that Sean Payton is on my top 5 coach of the year list right now. No. Listen, he's arrogant. He's smug. He thinks he's God's gift to football. He's got all these national media members in his pocket. They're talking him up at every turn. Reasonable people might find the guy pretty annoying, maybe quite annoying, you might even say. But the man can coach, and he was on fire again today. I know if you look at all their season-long offensive stuff, it's like it's not the offense, it's the defense. I get that. At the same time, you cannot deny that this offense is playing its best football right now, and he took a rookie quarterback who most people laughed at, and that guy's playing a lot better than he was early in the season, and he's setting the player up for success. That is coaching. Set the players who you have up for success. Bo Nix today, 28 for 33, 307 yards, 4 touchdowns, average pass only went 3.6 yards past the line of scrimmage. Now, he did rip some throws in the middle of the field, I thought today, that were very nice. But again, it's a mix. Bring him along. Hopefully he can make those throws, but also give him the easy throws. I mean, the Falcons had no answers. It was like a shock when the ball hit the ground in this game. They scored touchdowns, I think, on 4 of their first 5 drives. This one was a blowout by halftime. I think their offensive line, I don't know, every time I watch them, I'm like, Bo Nix isn't under a lot of pressure here. Their offensive line, and I know the Falcons pass rush isn't good, seems to be controlling a lot of these games. So Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos, I mean, they got blown out by the Ravens, although, you know, I thought there were some things in the first half there where that game could have been at least a little bit more competitive. They lose on a blocked field goal last week to the Chiefs, and now they go up against the Falcons this week, and they completely blow them out here. So Broncos are 6-5 in the season. I'm not saying they're a juggernaut or anything like that, but I think their over-under for wins was 5.5, Diante, coming into the season, and they've hit that before Thanksgiving.
You know, it's funny. I totally had this team mispegged. Like, I looked at this team coming into the year as like, oh, if you're really a good team, you crush this team, no big deal, move on to the next week. And they've had weeks where they've looked like that. Obviously, I think the Baltimore game kind of looked like that at times. Like, oh, all right, we can kind of see that this is a fake good team. But then they bounce right back from that, and they take Kansas City down to the end, and I'd say outplayed them. If not for that blocked field goal, they win that football game. And then I look at this week, and now I'm looking at Denver maybe as, it's not that if you're a good team, you crush this team. This might be if you don't have all your together, this team might beat you football team. And that's how they're playing right now. And a lot of that is because of the development of Bo Nix, how the rhythm he was in, how comfortable he was in the pocket. I know Steven and I have talked about this. Steven, I'm sure you've been on podcasts talking about this. Bo Nix was creating a lot of pressure for himself with his pocket management in the first 2 months of the year, whether it's drifting or seeing the pass rush or not understanding where to go in his progression to be able to alleviate some of the things that defenses are throwing at him. You're not really seeing that right now. You definitely didn't see that on Sunday against Atlanta. You saw a confident quarterback stepping up in the pocket, putting the ball in the middle of the field when he needed to, taking the easy buttons in the offense when it was there. And then that in conjunction with Sheil, what you were saying in terms of just an offensive design that's not asking this guy to be prime Drew Brees. He's not going to be a supercomputer back there. So don't design an offense for him to do so. I thought that last week was the start of maybe kind of accepting what Bo Nix is and just saying, hey, let's just design offense where if we want to take a shot deep in the middle of the field, everything about this play is designed to get a middle of field throw instead of just making it a piece of the progression. And that's kind of helped, I think, Bo Nix get out, break the huddle with confidence that he knows where he's going with the football. And I think that was reflected today.
Yeah,
Ruiz's blood has been boiling over there. Let's hear it. What do you got?
No. I made Sean Payton a winner in my winners and losers column today, so I gave him some respect. He was definitely cooking today. Like, I think he did. This is a good game plan. You talked about Nix's ADOT. He had the second highest expected completion percentage of the week behind Jaden Daniels, who also had a sub-4 ADOT. But it's a little prisoner of the moment-ish for me, especially from Sheil, who said you can't deny that the Broncos offense is playing better. They are playing better, but they also are coming off of 2 straight weeks where they scored 24 points combined. Like, over the last 3 weeks, including the 38-point outburst on Atlanta, they're averaging about 21 points a game. So it hasn't been that great. And it's still very much like the defense is carrying the load for the most part. And if that's the coach of the year candidate you're looking for, he's not even the best candidate in his own division. I would give that to Harbaugh, who has a better defense, who hired a better defensive coordinator so far, at least, if you want to give him credit for that. Yeah. Vance Joseph, and the offense has been better also. So I agree that Sean Payton did well on Sunday. I disagree with the fact that it's like been the case for the last couple of weeks, and the fact that he's a top 5 coach of the year candidate. He probably is in the top 10, though. I'll give you that.
All right. So not far off. Listen, I got to plant my flag, and sometimes what happens is you might be thinking you're going to say one thing in one segment of the show, and then you get a great Sunday night football game and you got to switch some things up and you say, I'm good with it. This isn't going to last long. My stuff gets erased from the internet anyway, as soon as, a week after I say it. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but those are things that happen in the content business, just letting people, a little peek behind the curtain here.
I wouldn't know anything about that. I definitely
you don't know anything about that. All right, let's take a break. We'll get to Diante and Steven, see where they're planting their flag. Diante, what do you got? Where are you planting your flag?
Oh man, this feels unfair to say. Like I thought about walking this back, and then I looked at the data and I was like, oh man, the data confirms what I'm looking at. Whether it's by injury and maybe he's not 100%, or something that's just gone wrong with the offensive line, Christian McCaffrey does not have the impact on this 49ers offense that he had last year. And I think that is just the latest ingredient that just kind of really proves the point that something in this offense is just kind of broken. And I don't think it's any one person's fault, but it's also not any one guy who can save it, right? I was looking at early down runs and you really felt it, I thought, this week of how ineffective those early down runs with Christian McCaffrey were. So far this year, it's a 33% success rate. 10% of those are going for 10 yards or more, and he's averaging 3.5 yards per carry, right? So by any other metric, you would look at that and say, like, that's basically a league average running back, which is not what they acquired when they traded for Christian McCaffrey, and certainly not what he played like last year when you look like the most valuable non-quarterback in the league, arguably. And the numbers support that. Last season, on those early down runs, 45% success rate. That's at the level of a passing offense. It's handing the ball off to Christian McCaffrey last year, 16% explosive runs and 5.5 yards per carry. That guy was basically an offensive system unto himself because he was so effective when you put the ball in his hands. And I think that, like I said, whether it's just athletically, you can definitely see him catch the ball sometimes on checkdowns, and he's not bursting out and making a guy miss in the way we saw last year. They gave him these like toss and outside zone looks, and he's not turning the corner on a very limited Seattle front seven, one that we've seen be run on at will by the better teams in the NFL. And I'm kind of starting to look at it and say, for all the conversation we've had about whether or not Brock Purdy has enough control at the line of scrimmage, which I think is kind of like a red herring argument or just a way for people to snipe at Kyle Shanahan for the results not being as good as they want it to be, or people who are criticizing the offensive line, which I do think deserves its time in the light, or Christian McCaffrey not being as effective. I just think that this offense is going through the normal attrition you see year over year. And the fact that all these pieces are not firing at top cylinder, I do think it's entirely possible that this team does not get itself back in shape quickly enough to get back in the playoff picture.
All right. We thank you to everyone for joining us. If you're watching on FanDuel TV, we appreciate it. For more, you can check us out at Ringer NFL on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. We will be back in a moment with the awards portion of this segment.